You didn't mean to stop. Maybe you went on vacation. Maybe life got complicated. Maybe you just forgot to buy seed and told yourself you'd get it tomorrow. And tomorrow became a week. And now you're standing at the window with your coffee, looking at an empty feeder. And the yard that used to be full of movement, the cardinal on the left branch, the chickadees cycling through, the nuthatch working the bark below, is quiet in a way that feels different from regular quiet. You want to know what happened out there. Here is the answer, and it is harder to hear than most people expect. Welcome back. Subscribe before you leave, because what you learn today will change the way you think about every scoop of seed you put out. The morning after you stopped, they were there, right on time. Same branches, same order. The cardinal first, because cardinals are early. The chickadees just behind him. The nuthatch working down the trunk of the oak the way it always does, head first, defying gravity. They came because your feeder has been full every morning for weeks or months, and their bodies, their actual survival systems, have been built around that fact. A black-capped chickadee in winter runs on the tightest energy budget of almost any warm-blooded creature alive. It needs to consume close to a third of its body weight in food every single day just to survive the night. When natural food is scarce, your feeder is not a bonus, it is load-bearing. So on the first morning, they came. They landed, they looked. The feeder was empty. They waited. Because waiting costs less energy than searching. Because their model of the world says this feeder is always full in the morning. Because you have taught them, through months of consistency, that this is a place they can count on. They waited longer than you would expect. This is the part most people do not think about. Waiting at an empty feeder is not neutral. It is not free. Every minute a small bird sits on a branch near an empty food source instead of actively foraging is a minute of energy spent on hope instead of survival. Researchers studying feeder-dependent bird populations have documented what they call site fidelity, the tendency of individual birds to return repeatedly to a known food location even after that location has stopped producing food. The behavior makes evolutionary sense. In a normal world, a food source that was productive yesterday is usually productive today. Seeds don't disappear overnight. Berry bushes don't empty in a morning. But feeders do. And the birds have no framework for understanding why. They cannot know you went on vacation. They cannot know the seed ran out. They cannot know you forgot. All they know is that the resource their survival model says should be here is not here, and their system tells them to wait, check again, wait some more. A Cornell Lab of Ornithology study tracking feeder-dependent chickadee populations found that when feeders were removed during winter, birds spent significantly more time in the vicinity of the empty feeder site before redirecting their foraging elsewhere. That time is not nothing. In extreme cold, that time is dangerous. Birds are not sentimental. They are mathematical. By the third morning of an empty feeder, most birds have begun updating their survival calculations. The feeder has failed to produce food 3 times in a row. The probability that it will produce food this morning has dropped below the threshold that makes returning worth the energy investment. They start foraging elsewhere. But here is what most people do not realize. Elsewhere is harder. The reason they built their territories around your feeder in the first place is because your feeder was reliable. The natural food in the area, the seeds in dried flower heads, the insects under bark, the berries that haven't been stripped yet, requires more energy to find and extract than the food you were providing. A bird that has spent 3 winters adjusting its foraging behavior around a reliable feeder may not forage as efficiently when it suddenly has to. The skills are still there. They don't disappear. But efficiency drops. And in winter, efficiency is survival. Some birds leave your yard entirely. They find other territories, other feeders, other food sources. They don't come back. Some birds stay. They work the area around your yard because the habitat is familiar. They know the trees, the shrubs, the places where natural food can be found. They survive. But the territory they've organized around your yard begins to loosen. They range farther. They spread out. The tight, organized, feeder-anchored community you built over months begins to unravel in days. Of all the birds in your yard, the one most likely to stay near the empty feeder longest is the one you probably think about most: the cardinal. Male northern cardinals are highly territorial. They do not abandon their territories lightly. When a reliable food source disappears from within their territory, they do not simply leave and find a new one. They stay. They defend the space. They return to the empty feeder again and again because the feeder is inside the territory they have spent weeks or months establishing, and leaving that territory means losing it. Researchers studying cardinal behavior in winter have documented individual males returning to empty feeder sites for up to 5 days after the food source was removed, far longer than chickadees or nuthatches, which redirect more quickly. That cardinal you watch every morning, the one with the specific posture you recognize, the one that arrives first and stays longest. He came back every morning you were gone. He sat on the branch where he always sits. He looked at the feeder that had no seed, and he left. And he came back the next morning and did it again. That is not a small thing to know about a creature. Here is the part that carries some comfort. When you refill the feeder, they return. Not all of them, not immediately, but they return. The chickadees are usually first. Within a day, sometimes within hours, the feeder is found again. Chickadees are the most exploratory birds in most eastern yards, constantly investigating, constantly checking known sites. If a food source that was empty yesterday is full today, a chickadee will find it. And when the chickadee finds it, the rest follow. Because that is how the system works. The chickadee's behavior at the feeder broadcasts safety to every other bird within range. It lands, feeds calmly, produces no alarm call. Every bird watching, the titmice in the tree above, the nuthatch on the trunk below, the cardinal on the fence, receives that signal and updates its assessment. The feeder is productive again. The safe human's yard has food again. Come back. Within 3 to 5 days of refilling, most of your regular visitors will have returned. The territory loosens, then tightens again around the food source. The schedule rebuilds. The morning routine reassembles. But not always completely. Some birds that found alternative territories during the gap do not come back. Some that ranged farther and found other feeders stay there. The community rebuilds, but it may rebuild slightly differently than it was before. You didn't mean to stop. Nobody does. But the birds in your yard do not have access to your intentions. They only have access to your behavior. And your behavior, from their perspective, was consistent and then suddenly wasn't. The responsibility that comes with daily feeding is not complicated. It is simply this. If you are going to feed birds through winter, feed them through winter. If you need to stop, taper off slowly. Reduce the amount gradually over 2 to 3 weeks so the birds have time to adjust their foraging behavior before the resource disappears entirely. If you go on vacation, ask someone to fill the feeder. If you can't do that, Reduce the seed the week before you leave so the birds begin redirecting before you go. This is not about guilt. It is about understanding what you built. The moment you started filling that feeder every day, you became part of their survival system. They reorganized their territories around you. They built their daily schedule around your routine. They taught their young that this yard, this feeder, this person is reliable. That is an extraordinary thing to have built. It is also a real responsibility. The next time you fill the feeder, especially if you've let it go empty for a while, I want you to do one thing. Watch the first bird that comes back. Notice how long it takes. Notice which species returns first. Notice whether it hesitates before landing, whether it looks around before settling in, whether it takes a moment to confirm that what it remembers about this place is still true. Because what you are watching in that moment is a wild creature deciding, again, whether to trust you. And the fact that it came back at all, after the empty days, after the waiting, after the uncertainty, says something about the relationship you built before you left. Tell me in the comments, have you ever let the feeder go empty by accident? Did you notice the birds waiting? Did they come back? How long did it take? I read every one. I will see you in the next one.